Okay, so we got a big speaker here today, so tall speaker, so I'm speaking up into the air. Okay, so our speaker for this afternoon's session is Eric Allen. He is an author, photographer, and lyricist, and on his website he calls himself a feral forest resident. Eric has written several books. I have two of them here, and there are more on the back table back there. Grateful by Nature, which you'll be talking about today. Grateful by Nature, Walking Gratitude's Wild Path Home, and Wild Grace, Nature as a Spiritual Path. So he has also written a book that again is on the back table about the 2010 World Champion San Francisco Giants. Now that seems like kind of an odd combination of what he writes about, but he's kind of eclectic. I think you'll find him eclectic here. So he is a founding member of Cerro Gordo Land Conservancy down outside of Eugene. It protects 1,000 acres of land near Dorena Lake outside of Cottage Grove. His professional credits also include 20 years in the music business, and he has a traveling multimedia show, and I think he's working on an album with some people right now as we speak, trying to finish it up. Eric and I and his wife Bev and my wife Linda, we all met on a Rhodes Scholar hiking trip to Joshua Tree National Park about a year and a half ago, and I found his interest as we were climbing ropes and ladders, if any of you have been there to the Joshua Tree Park. So, and I have found Eric to be a very centered person, and I thought his books and what he'll be talking about today would be very good for this audience.
Thank you, John. Yeah, you just never know how all this is going to work out. You go hiking in Joshua Tree and end up with a speaking engagement in Oregon as a result. I bought my car because I got stuck in an ice storm. I mean, I love all the random interconnections of things and the strange way that the world unfurls. But however it unfurls, I'm really grateful to be here today, and I'm really appreciative of you being here. And it feels ever more apt that we talk about the path of living gratefully in challenging times. In the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be speaking on how gratitude and grateful living connects to carpentry, to caregiving, to art in the broadest sense of the word, and to a reconnection to nature. To consciously practice living gratefully has been a path I've explored in my life for 30-some years now, ever since a series of traumas and tragedies affected me in my early 30s, and it sent me through the period of transformation that brought me to the best part of my life. That practice of gratitude has manifested in a number of paths along the path of those 33 years. The core of that is, in fact, the book called Grateful by Nature that John mentioned, which I wrote over the series of 5 seasons of caregiving for my mother in the woods at Dorena Lake by Cerro Gordo, where I live. From winter through winter. And that book is an interconnected series of stories that are both visual and verbal that also connect to a meditation on gratitude at the end of each story. That is quite a part of my path that connects to land, caregiving for my mother in the woods there, who you can see while stuck in the snowstorm with no way out, knew what to do, which is to take pictures and enjoy it. At 92 years old, standing there. And this is the house that she built with her own hands, where I did the caregiving for her, and now have that turning into a retreat center as well as my home on the land at Cerro Gordo, as John mentioned, where we've turned a project that was originally an intentional community into a conservation project and managed to get conservation easements to permanently protect 1,000 acres of land in perpetuity. So that is all a part of the work of grateful living, as is other multimedia events that I do. John, Linda, you might recognize that picture from the Mecca Hills in our Joshua Tree trip, where we come together to bring the practice of grateful living to life in a celebratory way with music, live music, spoken word, visuals, and always a nonprofit service cause that serves a project of universal human need. We've been doing this kind of project for 11 years by accident now. We thought it was a one-time event in 2015, and now it is an ongoing series that keeps growing and growing. The next one being at the Performing Arts Center on the OSU campus in Corvallis on April 29th at 5:30 p.m. That one is free. It also connects to a project I've had the great blessing of working on for 15 years with Dewitt Jones from National Geographic, Celebrate What's Right with the World. But all of that, as a part of the path of grateful living, comes down to the fact that gratitude is not a feeling, it is work. It is practice that we do, an active practice in the way we move through the world that may result in the feeling of gratitude, but the feeling of gratitude is not necessary to begin the work. The epigraph for my book, Grateful by Nature, was written by my co-founder of The Nature of Gratitude, Tom Titus, from his own book on gratitude, and it is this: what if our gratitude became a bedrock principle of living? This deeper form of gratitude wouldn't be based on what we have or what has happened around us or even how we happen to feel in any given moment. It would become a practice, a commitment in our lives. Gratitude would begin to acquire the characteristics of a love relationship. I think about that every day, and if I had to summarize my book, Grateful by Nature, in one line, it would be this: being grateful is like being a carpenter. The skills are only realized when you use them to build shelter for others. And so every morning when I get up, my first ritual is to touch that stone, that piece of wood, and turn on that salt lamp in my living room and go, okay, what is my work of gratitude today? I may not wake up feeling grateful. I may wake up feeling like I did this morning when I felt the war in my dreams and felt anxieties and woke up, and I didn't wake up feeling grateful on the morning in which I'm giving a presentation about gratitude. But that doesn't matter anymore, because I know that by doing the work of gratitude, which is today to bring gratitude to you, the feeling of gratitude will return. And there's no better transformation than that. It's an artistic process for sure, too. I was thinking about one of my favorite quotes from the art world, which I actually found in the art museum in Palm Springs when we were on that Joshua Tree trip, too. It reoccurred to me. The photorealist painter Chuck Close said, "The advice I give young artists, or really anybody who will listen to me, is to not wait around for inspiration. Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work." And I think that's just as much true with grateful living as it is with art. If we put as our purpose bringing gratitude for the miracle of being alive into the day and to building shelter for others with it, the inspiration will come. I certainly experienced that when I was in the radio world too, for a long time, when I was tasked with inspiring people for 3 hours a day with uplifting music, regardless of what I felt. I might come in there having terrible things happen or be in a bad mood, but once I found that first song, I was on the way, and by the time I finished inspiring others for 3 hours, I felt inspired. So this is that practice on a daily basis to really do the work of gratitude until we feel it. And gratitude as a path of transformation is most important in difficult times, and we are certainly in difficult times. It really was a series of traumas and tragedies that launched me onto it. In my early 30s, between the 10th and 20th of October, for 4 consecutive years, I went through 5 traumas and tragedies. I moved in with someone whose son died the next day, and while she was still in a coma herself from carbon monoxide poisoning, the Loma Prieta earthquake struck in the Bay Area while I was in the hospital waiting for her to be conscious. The next year, the Oakland fire happened and burned 3,000 houses. The next year, I was randomly gang attacked by 6 people. And the next year, I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here in the hot springs at Wilbur Hot Springs where I'm living. And I was soaking peacefully in the tub in that October time, and I found the lump that told me I had cancer at the age of 33. And I wasn't sure what the message was at the time, but the message was to reorient the frame of my life and to use illness and challenge to be a portal to being a healthier, more grateful, happier soul. When I was in the hospital, they made me a healing book. Everybody there took a page, and this was the transformative quote from the manager of the hot springs that launched me on this path in so many ways. When you embrace an illness and really learn what it's trying to communicate to you, your whole life can be transformed from the inside out. That forms the beginning of the prelude of the book, Grateful by Nature. It's kind of got a musical structure to it. And here's an excerpt from that beginning. I became grateful not merely despite my illness, but for my illness. I began to see its hidden transformative gifts. It was something to embrace and wonder, not just something to overcome. The adventure of illness taught me how to transform a wound into a gift, a central skill in walking gratitude's wild path home. I began to see that gratitude is a practice, like meditation, compassion, listening, and calm. It's a practice as constant and enveloping as air, to be absorbed and exhaled with every breath. I also learned to see gratitude as an art form, as much as watercolor, poetry, or chamber music. I sensed it as an art of communication, as vital as telling truth to a lover. I realized that gratitude is a sacred responsibility. Now, many years later, this moment offers us a painful decision to live or die, as my cancer once did. It offers us another chance to ask the fundamental question of life, which we all ask from childhood: why? To witness and transform our wounds may be far harder now than healing cancer, for the lethal illness isn't just mine or yours this time, but everyone's, even the Earth's. We're facing a collective choice: to forgive, heal, and live beautifully together, or die in agony alone. Within that crucible, to be grateful? Emphatically, yes. Gratitude, now more than ever, will save us in practice together, however faltering. We no longer have time to wait for mastery. It's essential now to explore the adventure of putting gratitude into practice as we walk our wild paths. Our shared life's growth is watered by our daily return to gratitude through a return to nature, the very nature of our being. Gratitude for the simple miracle of existence and for that miracle within each other is where this transformative path begins. Gratitude lets us love and honor each other despite our inner imperfections and difficult circumstances. The miracle of mere existence is what I feel now under my next layer of dying illusions, in my next moment of pained, clear insight. I see that when life again falls apart, our persistent existence offers us an opportunity to once again put it back together. We can't afford to fail in this adventure of grateful creation and love. So I was just reading that. I had a random memory pop back into my head. We were doing the prep work for one of our Nature of Gratitude live events, and one of the lines that was in our communication and in the book was, "I've met no masters of gratitude." And autocorrect thought it was supposed to be hamsters of gratitude. So we decided we were the grateful hamsters that year, and one of our artists started sending me pictures of very grateful hamsters on wheels. So all of a sudden I couldn't forget that, so I just had to bring that up. Well, I know of no better way to reconnect to the miracle of existence than to reconnect to nature. And that's easier in a place such as I live, which is out in the woods, but it's possible everywhere. And one of the things that I would teach in workshops from the other book that John mentioned, Wild Grace, Nature is a Spiritual Path, was to, wherever you are, look at the roots of nature in the context you're in. And anything you look at, you can look back and see its roots in nature. The wood beams that were once the trees, the glass that was once the sand, the plastic that was once the oil, that was once the dinosaurs, that was once deep in the ground. So I've always encouraged us, when we need a reconnection to nature, to restore our sense of gratefulness for being alive in this miraculous world, to just look around and find those elements wherever we are that reconnect to nature. There's a little bit of a story in Grateful by Nature about that and how it relates to what gratitude is and why we don't even need to source it within ourselves. And it's a piece called Stomped. Multiple meanings. I imagine myself as an oak. How do I experience gratitude? Well, how does an oak experience water? It becomes the same question. It becomes my answer. In one way, an oak experiences water through its leaves. It may absorb rain through leaves and bark, and leaves are one of water's most obvious results. Without water, oak leaves shrivel and fall off. Eventually, the whole oak dies. Leaves aren't an oak's main water source, though. With gratitude, as with water, my life would shrivel and fall away without it. I may absorb it from around me when it's in the air, and my gratitude is most obvious in the leaves of my thoughts and words, yet they aren't my gratitude's main source either. Water is primarily drawn into an oak through its roots, arising within from the earth below, the same place from which my gratitude is sourced. My gratitude isn't mine any more than the water is the oak's. It's drawn into me from a greater well and then returns to the earth when I release it. New gratitude I'll soon experience is already flowing towards me, as the water in the creeks is already flowing towards the oaks. Once the oaks draw from it, water will be found in every fiber of their being, roots, trunk, branches, leaves. It passes on to wasps that make their galls on the trees, to other insects that pause for a sip from the droplets leaves cradle. My gratitude also inhabits every fiber of my being when I'm open from my roots to absorbing it. And mine must pass through to others as well. I may first sense it as an experience, moving upward from within. But by the time I do, it's already arrived from beyond me. Only then does gratitude become a feeling that I can translate and release to you. Only then can I actively turn gratitude into growth and shelter others with my gnarled canopy. My gratitude is intertwined with that of others as much as individual oaks intertwine to make one forest. Your gratitude and mine communicate as roots do. We draw it from the same liquid source and purify the same shared air with it. Yet we uniquely branch, never to the same. My gratitude's role will only be complete when I've served the earth as completely as I can. When I too am a stump, needing water no longer, still serving as I merge with the forest floor. Others will absorb me then. My gratitude will be free to evaporate and move on. With every story in this book, there's a meditation that closes this section, and there will be a workshop element that comes from it as I develop the workshops out here in the woods. And this is a picture of our meadow at Cerro Gordo down by Cottage Grove, our central meadow, which we've been working on restoring the oak woodlands by removal of conifers and invasive plants and so on. Even since that picture, the meadow has expanded by 35% back to its original size, which isn't what I was going to say. I was going to give you the breathing meditation from Stumped, which is breathing in, I feel my roots watered by gratitude's arrival. Breathing out, I water the earth with my own gratitude. Breathing in, I feel my roots watered by gratitude's arrival. Breathing out, I water the earth with my own gratitude. I find it really comforting how much the gratitude comes from a source beyond us and within us, and how much gathering in a situation like this to celebrate and to be grateful in our actions really helps the practice. As with the meditation group, it's so much easier in a group. You don't have to carry the pressure of needing to come up with it alone, needing to feel it, needing to work it. And another thing that I really love about the connection between nature and gratitude is the metaphors that arise from the earth, especially at this time of year as spring and its annual cycle of renewal comes by. And so for this talk, I chose another piece from the book to excerpt called Inevitable Growth. Growth is innate and unstoppable. I see no evidence that anyone's ever attempted to prevent spring. Climate stress is inducing changes from earlier flowers to dying fir trees, but growth only shifts forms. I know the progression the meadow flowers will still take through soft waves of purple, yellow, and pink. Green grasses will transform the brown. The remaining songbirds will reappear from wherever they wintered. I'll feel my annual wish to ask them of their travels. I'll sense my own instinctive stirrings calling me towards song and soaring. Gratitude arrives in the same subtle way as spring, and just as intertwined with the darkness. Mine was growing long before it became noticeable, taking root in my deep inner black. Now it begins to tangibly emerge, as silent as the flowers. Even before dawn, it's easier for me to rise than it once was, given gratitude as the spirit with which I greet each day. Winter hibernation dissolves into embracing the returning light within. That subtly shifts my interactions with others. I have a bit more kindness, a higher commitment to service, a deeper strength in the softness of my quiet voice. Slowly, I'm growing and healing. I also notice more gratitude within others. It's easier to sense in you what I'm attuned to in me. Paying refined attention heightens my recognition of our shared spirit. Becoming actively grateful for you is a natural result of connecting with your grace, of touching into our resonance. My gratitude arrives as wildly as the songbirds and begins to sing. Yes, with gratitude as with birds. If we tend to gratitude's habitat, it thrives. If not, it vanishes. And gratitude's habitat is the natural, beautiful world for which we were born. Returning to gratitude is a return to nature. That wisdom also returns again and again, like dawn, light spring. So again each day, I rise with the first birds, again touching the driftwood on my windowsill, inscribed as it is with our simple, key, shared task. Let us be grateful. Gratitude yet to arrive is already useful now, like next spring is already beautiful. Knowing it's on its way deepens my embrace of what's difficult yet transient. It assists me in knowing what shelter to gratefully build to share in coming storms. Gratitude may take ages to seed and sprout, only emerging in a future when the meadow's flowers still arrive, but you and I no longer do. The meadow reminds me to grow instead of worry. Breathing in, I'm grateful that growth is inevitable. Breathing out, I naturally bloom. Breathing in, I'm grateful that growth is inevitable. Breathing out, I naturally bloom. The thoughts about gratitude as caregiving and as carpentry were about as random as getting a speaking gig in Oregon from hiking a canyon in Joshua Tree. My mom always walked down the dirt road with the community to pick up the mail every day, even after the mail was only junk. It was 3/4 of a mile to the mailbox, and that wasn't often long enough, and there was no point in the junk mail. But the walk was great. And when she could no longer walk it, I still did it for her, to experience it for her, to have her see it through my eyes. And I don't know, I was walking down the road one day and I heard this terrible engine coming up the dirt road, just this bad car. You're like, oh man, I don't know if that's going to make it or not. And this old battered diesel Mercedes goes by me, and I see the guy in it and I'm going, man, that looks like that old classic portrait of Jesus. And then I looked at his bumper stickers and they said, God save me from your followers. And the other one said, Jesus called, he wants his religion back. And I was like, dang, maybe that is Jesus. Maybe he's back. Maybe he's not posing as Sasquatch after all. But it got me thinking about carpentry and the importance of carpentry as a way of being and the building of shelter for others. And somehow that bizarre little interaction turned into the theme that can excerpt this whole book and summarize it in one line. So, go figure. But it was such an amazing experience to get to be my mother's caregiver. My mother was an amazing woman who was a pioneering pilot who got her pilot's license in 1946, graduated #1 from her class in the first aviation program for women in the country at Stevens College in Missouri, won the all-woman transcontinental air race in 1952 as a rookie after doing aeronautics, aerobatics, and all these other wild things, became a flight instructor, and then at age 51, she walked away from it all to build a house in the woods with her own hands, became a masterful watercolor artist, a land conservationist, and just one of the most gentle, wonderful people you could imagine. And I moved home to the woods at Cerro Gordo from Ashland, where I'd been for 17 years, to be with her. She was already 83, and I didn't know if I was going to get much time with her or not. And it turned out she lived to be almost 94, and we got to share 10 years as neighbors and friends. The last couple of years did turn into difficult caregiving, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And in the process of writing this book, the fact that we are all caregivers in our path of grateful living is what really came to the forefront. So this is a piece buried deep in the book, even though it seems to have become central for me. It's called Simply Caring. I moved home to be here for my mother years before she needed it. I knew caregiving would become my work of gratitude for her, central to my simple purpose. I also knew caring included shared healthy time together. Love means more than shepherding a dance of decline. Gratitude and discipline often coalesce into caregiving. Between growing up and growing old, caring for others takes root. It might be for children or aging parents, lover or animals, a garden, the climate, spirit. Life demands and deserves our care in infinitely individual forms, but our need to care, to truly love, is as inherent as our need to breathe. It's caring for self and life itself. To care is to accept responsibility on life's terms. There are no breaks in a young child's needs, nor an elder's. The earth never ceases needing reverent treatment. Caring requires getting up again this morning when the whole world is bitter with cold and I don't feel I can stir from under the weight of the covers. Caring requires finding energy again today, even though my inner voice cries, "No, not today. I don't have anything left to give." Yet again, beyond giving up is where giving begins. To fall into caregiving through discipline is like falling through a door and discovering open sky beneath, where gravity no longer matters. It's a place of profound beauty and lightness. It reminds me of a cartoon I saw with two people standing by a hole with a warning sign, "Bottomless pit." Emerging from the pit was a man weightlessly rising into the air. Said one observer to the other, "He must have started from the other side." One morning when I fell into my own pit, I looked up at my role as caregiver, seeing how give and take become the same. That's the caregiver's paradox. No personal reward is more profound than to give without regard for personal reward. The hidden joy within service is the essence of lightness. Groundless, I still served. I rose into the air on the pit's other side. That reaching lightness requires heavy work isn't a mystery to me now. Caring is another discipline where we attain skill by taking this one simple small action, then that one, then this one, again and again and again. Caring is another graceful manifestation of swarm intelligence, rising through a flock of my own simple actions merged with yours. Caring is a shared effort, especially when the mother we care for is the earth beneath our feet. Caring blends with gratitude. My caring blends with yours. Neither of us needs to care alone. Still, caring can be tough work even then. Mine requires me to put down my pen now to meet the next demand. I feel too heavily exhausted to do it. Yet, I'm more grateful for the lightness of exhaustion's results than I can ever describe. Breathing in, I'm grateful to be responsible for caring. Breathing out, I do what true caring requires. Breathing in, I'm grateful to be responsible for caring. Breathing out, I do what true caring requires. At the end of my mother's life, what true caring required was to go into memory care where she ended up for the final 4 months. I was able to keep her at home in the woods till she was 93 and a half, and then it all just kind of came apart. And that was one of those times, obviously during the pandemic, since I'm wearing blue gloves. But she never lost her positive attitude to the end. The last time we got her outside of the memory care, she was really fading. She couldn't walk. She could barely stay awake. And she wasn't much intelligible anymore for a lot of the time. And I came to the memory care center and said, oh, should we visit here or outside? And I leaned in really close to hear because she was often unintelligible by that point, and she said, sunshine! It was like the loudest thing she'd said in about 2 months. So we wheeled her outside, which was kind of an arduous thing to get to the deck. But we got her out there, and she kept falling asleep and waking up and falling asleep. And I sat there with her for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And then every time she'd wake up, she'd look around and see me and smile and go, really pretty day out here. Couldn't be a more perfect temperature. And those were our last conscious interactions in the outdoors. And I will treasure that forever. Well, the absolutely core principle I apply every day when I put my hand to that driftwood and touch the let us be grateful is again to identify what small bit of shelter I will be building today. What is it I'm building and for whom? In this case today, it's for you, and it's this, which is serving my inspiration at least as much as yours, I'm sure, because this is one of those days needing transformation. But I always think about that thing again. Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. So the gift of this life is getting up every single day and getting to work and appreciating whatever's given and transforming whatever it may need to be. So I figured for the final piece here, I would pull something from Grateful by Nature called Appreciating Whatever's Given. And the art for this piece that's in the book was as random as anything else, basically. I was walking in Lithia Park in Ashland, returning to my old town, thinking about trying to transform whatever was given, and I found a small bead on the ground. Glass bead, random thing. First I was just going to throw it away. And then I looked at it and I'm like, wow, look at that. It's got the whole day in it. Look inside that reflection. Look at all those colors. So I decided as I walked to think about how and what to appreciate that I would just keep putting that bead into different places and figure it out from there. So that's the reason for the art for this piece, the excerpt from Appreciating Whatever's Given. I feel I owe it to the earth to pause to appreciate the beauty of each passing season, however difficult that season has been. It's my responsibility as well as my pleasure to acknowledge the profound gift of being here. What is gratitude's role within appreciating whatever's given? My gratitude has as many faces as a hydra, the many-headed serpent of Greek mythology. Gratitude is not an evil hydra, though. It's reptilian but benevolent, a living creature that manifests in new primal ways every time one of its heads is separated by circumstance or carelessness. Gratitude is a life force beyond reach of individual birth and death. Gratitude arises in animalistic form if it needs to, or as water drawn up through our roots, or in an inanimate glass bead. Gratitude has been a refuge again for me this year, within the lick of wildfire, the pain of mistakes, the dissolution of old forms, the decline and passing of my mother, the harsh rise of societal violence and intolerance. Gratitude has given me a place in which to breathe deeply and simply be without encroachment for a moment. Gratitude has turned to the warming work of transformation once more. Gratitude is what has helped me take the jagged aspects of a cutting time and turn its wounds into the gifts of service. When I've woken again too early in the dark, anxious about something, everything, or nothing at all, I've risen again to transform anxiety into gratitude through writing. Then I've carried gratitude out into my day's other tasks. Gratitude has persistently informed my actions, its effects real even when unnoticed. How different my interactions would have been had I not maintained the humility of gratitude in these raw days. Gratitude has been a prayer, too. It's my prayer for understanding and compassion. It's a prayer that if enough of my gratitude is turned into community service, somehow the future will be fine. It's a prayer that you'll join me, that enough others will stand beside us in choosing gentleness and kindness to ease the harder tensions of this time. In that way, gratitude has become both my activism and my pacifism. It's my way of bringing the most wholeness I can into broken days in a way that isn't motivated by my reaction to the negative. I can't merely be motivated by reaction and resistance, for then my motivation would be based upon the very thing I seek to dissolve. I don't want to become what I resist, as people often do. Gratitude keeps me from becoming invested in suffering. Gratitude is my communication as well to ancestors and antecedents, family and friends, strangers I would love if I knew them, close ones I've hurt despite never having that intention. Gratitude is an expression of apology, an action of making amends. It's an action that will never be over as long as I breathe. Gratitude is welling up again, water through my roots to feed another season of service. I can hardly wait for its autumn rains to refill my dry inner creeks. Gratitude is an embrace as well. It's what allows me to open in wonder to all that arrives, to meet each day as a friend and not an adversary, though every day begins as a stranger. Gratitude is what allows me to find the soul within new machines, the art within the pain, the role I have in places I never would have chosen to go along this wild path home. Gratitude is surrender at last. Breathing in, I'm grateful for each season I'm given. Breathing out, I feel times expand when I embrace them. Breathing in, I'm grateful for each season I'm given. Breathing out, I feel times expand when I embrace them. That is my closing advice. I found that t-shirt somewhere at a crafts fair, and I ended up wearing it a lot in the caregiving days. So, and another, just a reminder as well, that whatever we do in small ways, it ripples outwards into the world. So every small thing that you do, whether or not you notice the effects of it, the effects are there. So thank you for humoring me for these past 45 minutes and sharing this path of gratitude with me. And we will have about 10 minutes for discussion and questions, should you wish to discuss and question. And John has a microphone, and so does Gwen Ellen, to pass around for any questions that you might have. I see a hand.
Here we go. Right here.
Mr. Eric, thank you very much. I have gratitude for your speech on gratitude, number one. I'm a retired geriatric social worker. I've been in the field for a while. A few weeks ago, a friend and I were discussing a fantasy, a possibility. What if Oregon became the first state in the union to have every community college have a class on caregiving? If you were a leader of such a movement, where would you begin having that take place?
I would begin having that take place in the home, within our families, within our friendships, and spreading outward from there. Maybe I would even have it begin on the land itself, because without caring for the land, there is no home. And I feel like our education is often too rooted in facts, some of which are questionable, and not in ways of being. And I think our education could really use reframing, beginning on the land and at home.
Hi, my name is Tom, and first of all, I would just like to express gratitude for your Dharma talk on gratitude. I really needed that today, because this past week I was just diagnosed with congestive heart failure, which my father died of and my brother is dying of right now. And it was rather traumatic, but your talk gave me a lot of very useful and powerful wisdom to contemplate. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and good luck with your own transformation of illness. You know, one of the things I learned about cancer was how little it changed as well as how much. Because in one certain sense, we're all dying. It's all going to happen, and you never know when it's going to be, and the goal is always to live as fully each moment and not necessarily how many moments. And cancer didn't change that much. I mean, it was life-changing, and yet nothing changed. It makes me think of a friend of mine in Ashland who's since passed from cancer, but he was in his dying process when I ran into him in a deli, and he looked at me, and he got this big old smile on his face, and he said, "You'd think cancer would change something." He said, "But I still have relationship issues, and I still need a turkey sandwich." And then he laughed like crazy and went and dug his own grave with his own shovel. Didn't expect to tell that story.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I want to thank you for your talk, and also I have experience with being with a parent who's in the last stages of life. And I was wondering, why is it hard for some people to just have that concept of gratitude? And another thing that that's all. Okay, thanks.
Why is it hard to have the concept of gratitude? For me, maybe that goes back to the difference between gratitude as a feeling and gratitude as a practice. Because I certainly have had difficulty feeling grateful in life. When we first started our Nature of Gratitude multimedia events, I felt like an imposter oftentimes. Something terrible would have just happened in the world, seemed to happen every time before our events. It was like, how the hell am I supposed to stand up there and feel grateful? It's like, well, it's hard, but it's not required. It's like that goes back to the fact that I don't have to feel grateful to go, okay, I'm going to build a little shelter made from elements of gratitude, even if they feel like pieces of wood I pick up from the scrap heap. And then it gets easier, and it always gets easier to practice together. So this is that. And I don't know if that answers your question or not, because I don't know if I have the answer. But that seems to be the answer I have at the moment, so I hope it's good enough.
I have a question for you.
Okay, John.
So your first book was about nature as a spiritual path.
Correct.
And I know from previous conversations, a little bit, that you kind of transformed over to gratitude. Could you explain that transformation and kind of what the difference in mindset or approach is? Thank you.
Well, it was a nonlinear path, like everything in my life, and like most things in my life. It probably doesn't make any sense, but it's certainly, beginning on nature as a spiritual path came out of my cancer healing journey. Again, when I got out of the hospital and was at my mother's place beginning to heal, I realized that nature was my cathedral, and my healing was rapidly getting better as soon as I got out of the hospital and into the land. And that led me off of 10 years of going, oh, it's my spiritual path. What the hell does that mean? I have no idea. So I wrote a book about it, because writing is how I figure out my own feelings. And that led me to another book called Grace and Tranquility, where once I was on my spiritual path of nature, I wasn't peaceful. So I'm of the mind that you write what you need to know, not what you know. And so I wrote about tranquility because I needed it. And all the path of gratitude was embedded in that like a seed that had yet to manifest. And as you mentioned in the intro, I took a random left turn into writing about baseball in between. I got a chance to co-write about the 2010 Giants, who were an awesome team, not because they won, but because of how they won, because of how much they loved each other and how free they were with this different group of guys that didn't make any sense on paper, and beat all the people that were better than them because they loved each other more and had a better time, and were grateful for another chance to be in the majors. Cast-offs and misfits, they called themselves. And it was a really incredible story to get to write. And somehow that fed into my path of gratitude as well. And the person who inspired my first foray into merging photography and writing was Dewitt Jones from National Geographic, one of the most legendary National Geographic photographers ever, but a man who wrote a column in Outdoor Photographer magazine called Basic Jones that wasn't about technique, it was about experience. It was about deepening experience in the world, and I loved his work. I found it just when I was healing from cancer in 1993, and I set out as my goal to meet Dewitt and kind of follow his path, and that utterly failed for a long time. I gave up on it. But weird things happened, and I ended up writing for a nature journal back east in which his column randomly appeared next to mine. And I said, whoa, I got to tell you this story, my editor. And she said, oh, you should tell that to DeWitt. I said, I've tried for years. How do I get a hold of DeWitt? She said, oh, he's an old friend of mine. Here's his number. So he'll love this story. So I called him up, told him the story. He wanted to see the book. Bev and I went over to see him on Molokai in 2010, and I've been working with him ever since. And so the path of celebrating what's right with the world, as long as the path of gratitude all intertwines that much. And my path with Bev. You know, it occurs to me that, I don't know why this only occurred to me this week, but every writer, in order to continue to write, regardless of what happens to it, needs to fall in love with the page. And I took it really literally by falling in love with Beverly Page. Thank you, darling.
I have a question and an invitation. I'm over here.
Okay.
This is Gwen Ellen, and I'm wondering if you've considered like a daily blog that someone could subscribe to that you would send out on your gratitude of the day?
I think daily is a little too much for me to handle. I have a monthly column that still goes out through the Celebrate What's Right with the World email list to about 8,000 people, and it also gets posted on ericallen.com. That's all up there. Yeah, daily's a little much on the deadline front with as many other projects as I have going on, but it's a great practice because I need the gratitude every day as much as anybody else. There's also an organization called Grateful Living, grateful-living.org back east, that sends out a gratitude for the day email list that I recommend you look at as well. So they're kind of doing the work for me. I don't have to do it alone.
Okay, I have one more question. As far as like the end of life and all of that, I've had experience with, you know, like my father and an aunt who could not fathom, you know, what happens afterwards. And I wonder if maybe gratitude helps people transition.
I would think so. Certainly my mother's gratitude for her life helped her transition, although her gratitude for life also made her want to live forever and never want to transition. So I'm not really sure how that works. I'll get back to you after I transition and tell you what's going on the other side.
Okay, I think that that's all we have time for. So let's thank Eric for coming in and talking to us today.